Welcome to the Midlife Leap, a lifestyle talk show for women in midlife. I'm your host, Sunita Johnson, and I am excited to share tips and interviews on topics ranging from business, career, current news, fashion, shopping, travel, health, and so much more. And because I'm known as the Midlife Leap Coach, from time to time, I'll share some of my signature Midlife Leap coaching tips. So come on, ladies, let's reignite and reimagine our midlife leap journey together. Is inflation hitting you hard in the pockets? Well, here are 3 tips to survive this economic downturn. 1, keep an eye on what you're spending daily. When your money is squeezed, you should keep track and write down how much everything is costing you every day. Sounds difficult? Well, business owners do this all the time. So think of your life as a business, because it is, and create a budget. Tip number 2, cut costs. Look for areas where you can cut back on household bills, such as getting rid of premium cable channels that you don't watch. And do you leave random lights on in the other parts of your home and nobody's in those rooms? Well, cut back on the electric bill by turning off the lights. And look for sales on the items that you usually purchase at the grocery store. Just go to the website or check out the free sales paper that's usually distributed every week for items that's on sale. And write down a shopping list, but stick to only what's on that list when you go to the store. And remember to use that discount card. Tip number 3. Earn extra income. There are many part-time remote income opportunities out there than ever before, thanks to the internet. You can literally search YouTube for content creators who specifically share legitimate extra income opportunities available nationwide. Flexjobs.com is another great part-time remote source. There are non-remote options such as restaurant work, Amazon warehouse, and Uber, just to name a few. But you can also start a business on the side, maybe consulting work, something where maybe there's not as much upfront cost, because usually you'll have to advertise, you may have to buy office equipment, things like that. So keep that in mind. I hope these 3 tips help you make it through this economic downturn. We're all going to be all right. Are you more irritable than usual? Do daily hassles and chores take a lot out of you? Are you having problems sleeping? Well, our guest, Dr. Julie Shafer, is here to let you know that you are not alone. Dr. Shafer, a clinical psychologist for over 15 years, has developed a unique combination of tools and methods that has helped hundreds of her clients, over 400, to manage stress and live a happier, healthier life. Sounds good? Need it? Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Shafer, for joining us. We know during these times, this is a needed topic.
Yes, very much so. I work with patients all week and with my coaching clients too. And the thing that just strikes me is how stressed out everybody is, and they don't even know it. Or they might know, I'm stressed out about this one little thing over here, this deadline I'm trying to meet, or my kids are having this thing happen and it's stressing me out. But they don't get that that's all happening in this soup of stress that we're all living in right now. We've got, just name a few: inflation, climate change. People are still struggling with both the COVID and with the after effects of having spent a year and a half in lockdown, or 2 years in lockdown, right? And so the way I think about it is the background level of stress is just notched up, and we don't really notice it as something on the front of our mind. Like, most of us don't wake up saying, "Oh, I'm so stressed about the climate," but we know that it's really hot, or it's raining a lot, or the snows were worse this past winter. And when you see the news and you see how bad things are, it weighs on you. So it's harder to deal with the daily stress.
So you have a quote where you say emotions are just storms that will pass, that they don't last forever. How does this relate to stress? Because I tend to think that stress is more than emotions.
Yeah, stress can come from two sources, right? So it can come from what's happening in our life, our environment. If you've got a deadline at work, or a boss that's hard to deal with, or it's just a lot to get to work and back from work. I mean, I think a lot of us are working from home, but not everybody, and that can be a hassle. And so we've got all those external stressors, but then we also have internal stressors. The way we handle information, what we think about, what we focus on, can contribute more to whatever we're dealing with in our external situation. So, for example, let's say you have something going on at work and that's really stressing you out, but you believe or you think that you're not sure if you're going to be able to get it done, or your boss isn't going to approve of it. Then the way you think about it is going to affect your level of stress. It's going to make it worse.
So what are some tips, like maybe 3 tips that you usually share with your clients to help them get on the other side of stress?
Yeah. So one of the things that I find that a lot of my clients do is that when they start getting stressed, they start doing, it's kind of like they're trying to multitask, but they're paying attention to everything at once. And so what happens to our attention at that point is it becomes very much surface level attention, and it's very broad and shallow, and we're covering everything. Like there's the to-do list goes on forever, and there's just one little like ball being dropped after another that we have to deal with. So the first thing I tell people is what you need to do is narrow your focus onto one thing. Because if you're focusing on all these little things out here, it naturally amps up our stress response, because it's about danger. We have to pay attention to everything. Where's the snake in the grass coming from? So we need to focus on one thing. Thich Nhat Hanh says, when you're doing the dishes, do the dishes. It's just do the dishes. And so narrow your focus to one thing.
Okay.
And that will deepen your focus, and that will help relax you. Because
so
it's
basically knocking out one stressor at a time, sort of put out that one fire, then go to the next one. You can't deal with all the fires at once.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because you do this one thing and then you do the next one thing, but that's all. You're not worried about the third thing down the list. You're just doing this thing. Yeah.
So would you suggest that they deal with the most important stressor or the biggest stressor, if that's possible?
Yeah, sometimes it's a little hard to tell, right? Like, what's the most important thing to do? But I think when your focus is all at the surface level, everything feels important. But what's really important, like what's important to you? Your kids are important to you. Your job is important to you. Your partner is important to you. And so what's the thing that's important to deal with right now? And if somebody in your life is having a crisis, you might need to go talk to them and not worry about getting to work on time or getting dinner on the table, or kind of whatever the thing is that you're also trying to get done. Right? Is that?
Yeah, it makes sense. So okay, I remember once years ago, a friend of mine told me that stress is a normal part of life. You're never going to get rid of the stress. And I remember when she said it, I thought, gosh, that's an awful way to live. But I think as I get older, I'm starting to wonder, like, was that accurate? Or is it just that we're going to have stress, but you have to learn to manage it? What's the truth in that statement, if it's truthful at all?
Yeah, well, I think it is, but there's some nuance to it. First of all, whenever you make a choice about something you're going to do, you are essentially picking a set of problems to deal with. So think about this. If you're single, you have a set of problems. You don't necessarily have somebody to go to a function with. You don't have somebody to curl up on the couch with. And you also don't have somebody to argue with or to make you late to things, right? And if you're married or in a partnership of some sort, you have a different set of problems. And people who are married often romanticize the idea of being single, and people who are single romanticize the idea of being married. but essentially what you're dealing with is which set of problems do you want to have? So in that sense, there's always something to deal with. Okay. Now, how you think about it will determine in large part the level of stress you have in response to it. So if you're focused on the negative, if you're focused on, oh, let's say you're in a partnership, your husband always makes you late. And if you just focus on that every time and you make it a thing, then it's aggravating, it's going to stress you out. It's going to make you angry right before you leave. And it's going to probably create some conflict with you and your husband. There are other ways to approach it. And that can keep your stress level lower and not create so much conflict. So it's how you are dealing with the problems that you've picked.
So if a client comes to you, potential client, and they're sharing, that they're under all of this stress, do you help them to determine what to deal with first, or what's your approach?
Well, so first of all, I would do is let's just write out everything you're dealing with. Let's just really take an inventory here. If they're struggling, if after doing that inventory, there's some question about where to start, one of the things people can do is check in with their values and what's most important to them as a guidance of where to start. Sometimes you have to start with the thing that's on fire the most, right? So you do that. I like to then transition people into thinking about the difference between urgent and important. So urgent things are on fire, and important things will be on fire if you don't deal with them. Right? So you want to knock out all the fires and then focus your time on the important things before they become urgent to the extent that you can. You don't always have control over that, but to the extent that you do, it's pay your bills on time, get your car registration in, before it becomes a year past due when you get pulled over, and then it's now I got to spend all my time dealing with this, right? So sometimes it's just a lot of those little things that you deal with that are important, but they're not really urgent, so they don't seem like they're that important.
Yeah. See, I'm a huge proponent of writing things down, because I think that once you see it on paper, there's some things that you think are stressful, and you look at it and you realize that actually that's not so bad. Over here, this is more important, or This is more vital. Do you have clients that sometimes they realize writing it down may minimize it?
Absolutely. Because what happens, we get into the stress response and our fear kicks in, right? And once fear kicks in, each of those little things on our list are like hamsters running around a room, right? And you can't really corral them, and they're running away from you, and they're very abstract. So they just spin around in your head. And what happens when you write it down is it becomes a concrete thing. And you can now see its importance. Sometimes you write stuff down, you're like, this is so not even important, right? Or you're telling somebody about it, right? And you kind of hear yourself talking about it, and you're like, what is my problem? Because it was all in your head, and getting it out of your head really, really does help with that. Yes.
Yeah. This probably isn't related, I'm not sure, but just like right now, everyone's stressed out about the economy, inflation. And one thing I've been saying to myself when we go through this, because we've been through, economic downturns many times. And I always think, until everything is being burnt down in this country, there's still money out here. Unless that happens, there's still money out here. So I just need to figure out how to get some more money to deal with the changing times. Because we know that when things are really bad, we see other countries where there's a lot of rioting, and, people are really frustrated and upset. And it's throughout the country. So we're not there yet. We haven't been there that massive. So we're okay for now.
Yes. Cross our fingers. Right? Yeah, we are. And I think we can lose sight of that. So I think what we focus on is really important, right? We need to take a look at the whole entire pie And we can shift our focus to the things that are working, to the opportunities we do have, and shift away from the things we're most scared of. However, you kind of have to be intentional about that, because when we start to get stressed and that fear response kicks in, it also shifts our focus over to the negative stuff. Like, it's like gravity. And so we have to say to ourselves, okay, well, what do I like about my job? What is going well at home? If you think about your day, so it's the end of the day and you're thinking about your day, it's natural to start thinking about what went wrong, or we all have those days where it seems like nothing goes right, but that's not true. And we have to consciously make the effort to say, okay, well, what went well? What did I enjoy? What am I excited about tomorrow? That kind of thing. But it's intentional and it's shifting your focus.
I love that you just said that that's not true. Like you said, we've all had days we think that, oh my God, this is the worst day of my life. Everything went wrong. But that is a huge mindset. That's not true, because you did wake up. You did.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? I won't say I never, but I like that that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not true. Yeah. It's just because that's all you're focused on. And I don't know if anybody's ever had one of those days where they can't, you drop your coffee cup in the morning and you forgot to put the clothes in the dryer the night before, and then you walk out in the garage and you got a flat tire. Like, there's just those days, right, where the hassles are more front and center than normal. But if you'll notice that once you kind of get into the mindset that that's happening, like it's a thing that's happening to you, then you start looking for those things for later on in your day that make the day not go well. Yeah. So you've actually creating your own experience at that point.
And I think sometimes it's acceptance. Like right now, my father is in the hospital. He has Alzheimer's. I think he had a stroke. He's okay now. But I'm also shifting my mindset more so where, I recognize it anyway, but his time is dwindling here on earth. So it's going to be a sad moment. It's going to be stressful, but it's a part of life. So just, like the economy, it goes up and it goes down. It's a part of life. Financial stresses for everyone, even the wealthy, because they're trying to fight to keep their money.
Yes.
So it's like all of it. It's ebb and flow. It's a natural part of life. And I think that acceptance is really key, which I think goes back to mindset.
Yeah, I think you're right. Funny you should mention that, because my father just passed away recently, a few months ago. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, because, with your parents, with just about any family member, right? There is a whole host of things that run the gamut from this really was dysfunctional or didn't work, and this felt dysfunctional, but you know what? In the end, it was okay, to this was a really wonderful thing, right? And how we frame those things really affects how we experience them. And so to look back and say, it was really sad what happened, and the progression to somebody's death is often quite hard and sad for people, and very stressful for families. But to what are you focusing on? Right? And look at, you've got a person who lived a good long life, probably healthy most of the time. Not everybody is healthy most of the time, but they were. And they've now got the care that they need, even though they can't take care of themselves. And we can celebrate this good life.
Some are struggling more than others.
Yes.
And what would be, I guess, your greatest message right now?
Well, I really would like people to first just recognize that we're all swimming in a soup of stress. But I don't want you to be afraid of the stress. There is this really excellent TED Talk. Kelly McGonigal was the name of the speaker, and the name of the talk is How to Make Stress Your Friend. And it turns out that when we have a stress response, there are some very natural things that happen to us that take care of us as we're dealing with that stress. For women in particular, we get a big boost of oxytocin, And that oxytocin, it sort of encourages us to connect with other people. And other people is a very good resource for helping to manage our stress. We can regulate each other better. How many times have we gotten upset and we've called up our girlfriend and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened, right? And your girlfriend is like, says exactly the perfect thing. And the next thing you know, you're both laughing.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how we regulate each other. So don't be afraid to reach out. I can't tell you how many people hate asking for help, hate it, but people love helping.
Yeah.
So kind of buckle up and reach out and ask for help, because you're giving somebody else the opportunity to help you. And that's as good for them as it is for you. So right?
Don't isolate, seek out.
Don't isolate. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be afraid to seek out support from people. So, recognize you're stressed. Watch that TED Talk. It'll give you a new perspective on stress and how just don't be afraid of it. Embrace it and take care of yourself.
I love that. So how would a potential client reach you?
Sure. Well, they can go to my website. I'm at drjulieshafer.com. That's drjulieshafer.com. You'll also find me on Instagram and Facebook. But my website's the best place, and there's a contact form there. You can get on my newsletter. I've got some free resources. So, yeah.
And you also help clients with love. So I don't want everyone to be confused. They go to your website and it's primarily about relationships. You're at the right place.
Yes. Yes. Well, but think about this. So you and I are talking about stress, but when you have a problem of any kind, it's going to have some ripple effect into your relationships. So as a psychologist, I have dealt with, I don't know, thousands maybe of different problems that people have had over the years, but only maybe a handful of them didn't somehow affect a relationship in their life. Whether there's a family member, a friend, a coworker, neighbors, I mean, you name it. And so relationships are really both affected by and can affect our stress. We both know that, but also in a good way. Like I said before, we can connect with people and they can help us get through tough times. So it really does all come down to relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you said that, because my first thought was when I first needed to move my dad when he was still in Alabama, putting him in the nursing home, everything. I was dealing with a relative basically who pulled a lot of shenanigans.
Yes.
So I literally had to go out there and do everything in stealth movements and get my dad, get him situated, move everything before this person knew what was going on. My dad's attorney was informing me of everything. I had, secret information going on.
Yes. Yeah.
So when I came back, my loved one, my honey, was joking around, and I was exhausted and mentally, emotionally, everything. And he was telling jokes like he normally does. And I asked him to stop, but he didn't take it seriously. And I just blew up. So now he realizes, oh, wow, when she's that stressed out and she says, stop, just stop. And he didn't mean any harm. He was just joking around. That could have been the end of us.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, Dr. Shafer, thank you so much for joining us. I pray that people reach out to you and you just help other people, find their way back to happiness and healing, emotional healing and prosperity. Prosperity isn't just money, people. Prosperity is health, mental, everything. So it all comes
very much.
Thank you.